Sam Bankman Fried is finally arrested in the Bahamas. The last Confederate monument is removed from Richmond, Virginia. The US Energy Department has a big announcement that could change the way that we generate electricity. And my interview with John McEntee, founder of the dating app The Right Stuff, and the former personal aide and director of personnel to President Donald Trump. I'm Julie Hartman, and this is Timeless. Welcome, everyone. It is Wednesday, December 14th, 2022, and we have three big news stories to cover today, so let's get right into it. The U.S. government has finally announced criminal charges against Sam Bankman Fried, also known as SBF, the cryptocurrency fraudster once on the covers of Forbes and Fortune. SBF is a name that is no stranger to this broadcast. On the third episode of Timeless, I gave a short summary of what cryptocurrency is and how SBF went from being a billionaire adored by the American elite to a disgraced criminal. The Bahamian authorities arrested him at 6 o'clock Monday night at his apartment in Nassau. He is now going to face extradition, meaning that he will be removed from the Bahamas to be charged and tried here in the United States. The SEC, or Securities and Exchange Commission, has announced 8 criminal charges against SBF, including fraud, conspiracy, campaign finance violations, and money laundering. And if he's found guilty of all of them, he could face up to 130 years in prison. Now, interestingly, SBF was scheduled to testify via Zoom in front of the House of Representatives Financial Services Committee yesterday, Tuesday, December 13th, to give his explanation of what happened. But he wasn't able to do that, obviously, since he was arrested on Monday night. But SBF did release a transcript of the testimony that he would have given, and the first line of it, he said, "I effed up." Even though SBF released the transcript of what he would have said had he testified, the fact that he was arrested the night before he was scheduled to do this raises the question, are there things that people in Congress or other powerful people were afraid that SBF might say if he were allowed to testify yesterday? SBF certainly has a habit of saying more than he should. He's given a lot of interviews over the last few weeks after it was announced that his firm FTX had committed fraud. And as I reported on, he's been a bit loose-lipped with regard to his feelings about Western wokeism. He claims that he became enthralled in a culture that rewards meaningless platitudes over actual good behavior. So it's a bit curious that they arrested him the night before that he was supposed to testify via Zoom before Congress, after the US government had already waited a month to arrest him. So we will certainly continue to cover this SBF saga as it unfolds. In other news, Richmond, Virginia has removed its last Confederate statue that stood in a busy roundabout for 130 years. The statue depicts Confederate Lieutenant General Ambrose P. Hill, whose bodily remains lie below the statue. The City Council has announced that they will give the statue to the Black History Museum and Cultural Center of Virginia, and that they will transport his remains to a nearby cemetery. Now, obviously, there has been a huge debate over what to do with the Confederate statues that have stood in the South for over 100 years. And there's one side of the debate that says that just the fact that these statues stand somehow legitimize the Confederates' position. They legitimize the pro-slavery attitudes that they had. Now, there's another side of the argument, and I tend to fall into this side, that says This is a part of our history. And if we want people to know about our history, if we want people to know about the bitter battle that we fought over getting rid of slavery, that 620,000 Americans lost their lives in the Civil War, that there was a side of our country that wanted to secede from the Union because they so badly wanted to preserve this horrible institution of slavery, if we want people to know about this history, I think the best way to do that is to leave the statue still standing so that people in their daily lives, whether they're driving down the street or walking down the street, can see it. And they can look at it and go, oh my gosh, this happened right here. The Confederacy marched right here. I think it ties us to our history in a way that putting this statue in a museum does not. Because people get to decide whether or not they go to a museum. But people don't get to decide what statue they see on their drive to work or when they walk down the street. So I think that a better solution to this would be to put a plaque under or next to these Confederate statues, explaining the ugly history and explaining the significance instead of getting rid of it altogether. Because isn't it what we want to raise awareness about what happened in our past? So anyone who says that there was one right answer to this issue, in my view, is seeing it from a narrow-minded perspective. There isn't just one right answer, and both sides do have legitimacy to their argument. In the final news story of the day, the United States Energy Department announced a breakthrough in nuclear energy technology, that there has been a fusion reaction that generated more energy than it took to create. So why is this so important? Nuclear energy, like coal, oil, and natural gas, can be used to generate electricity. The fuel sources heat up water, which creates steam, which turns the turbines to create the electricity that we all use. So obviously, you burn coal and oil to create energy, but nuclear energy works differently. In a nuclear reaction, energy comes from either splitting one atom, and that's called fission, or fusing two atoms together, and that's called fusion. Most nuclear power plants currently create energy through fission. In fact, 10% of the world's electricity comes from nuclear fission. Fission uses uranium rods as fuel, but it generates a large amount of waste that remains radioactive or toxic to humans for hundreds of thousands of years. So where to put this waste is a big problem because oftentimes, all of the time, the waste lives for much longer than the container that fits it. But fusion, which comes from combining two atoms, generates very little waste, so this isn't a problem. The downside with fusion reactions is that it generates an enormous amount of heat, and you have to use more energy to manage that reaction than the amount of energy that the reaction itself generates, so oftentimes you have a net energy loss. But what's groundbreaking about this Energy Department announcement is that they said that they were able to do this with a net energy gain. So if we can generate nuclear energy using fusion instead of fission, that would be big for our energy future, and environmentalists in particular should be very happy about it. As I said, there wouldn't be a waste problem. It's also extremely cheap to do. And crucially, you don't have to extract coal, oil, natural gas, or uranium from the ground to make it possible. But the problem is that the United States doesn't have many nuclear power plants left. Environmental groups over the past few decades have tried to eliminate them because of that possibility of a radioactive leak. Most of our current nuclear power plants were commissioned before 1980. But the problem is that these plants only last for 40 to 50 years because the equipment is used so heavily and it eventually wears out. The US government keeps shutting these plants down and we have barely been able to replace them. We've only licensed 2 new ones in the past 26 years. So we should all hope that the US Energy Department can continue to make breakthroughs in fusion reactions so that we can get these nuclear power plants back open and find cleaner and cheaper solutions to generating energy. So now that I have talked to you about complicated things like fusion and fission, let's move on to some light stuff by talking about the right stuff. I am so pleased to be able to interview John McEntee, who is the founder of the Right Stuff dating app, and he also served as a personal aide to Donald Trump. Hope you enjoyed the interview. Today, I am joined by a very special guest, John McEntee, who is the founder of the dating app, The Right Stuff, and he was also a personal aide and director of personnel for President Trump when he was in office. Hi, John. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
This worked out very well because when I called John to do the interview, you happened to be driving down to LA from Orange County.
Right,
so
yeah, it's great timing.
it was very convenient. So as I just said, you worked under President Trump for a few years, so you lived in DC. When did you move back to LA and start The Right Stuff?
Moved home right after the administration ended. Started working on The Right Stuff about a year and a half ago.
So what compelled you to start this dating app? I mentioned to you before we were on air that Dennis and I, Dennis and I do a podcast together. We, about 8 or 9 months ago, were talking about starting a dating app because we thought there's such a market for this, for conservatives to find like-minded people. So you swooped in and did it before us, but it's a great idea. So what impelled you to start it?
Yeah, well, there's a dating app for almost every group, and we just thought there should be one for conservatives. The idea was brought to us by a few female friends of ours who were conservative women and wanted to meet conservative guys, and there wasn't a good way to do that. When the administration was ending, me and 2 of my co-founders, also who worked in the administration, we wanted to do something different. We didn't want to necessarily stay in politics, but we want to do something still in the conservative world. Obviously, the tech stuff's becoming big with Parler and Truth and Rumble. So that was kind of already being tapped into. But when this idea was brought to us, we took it to an investor, and I just saw him light up at the idea. He's like, dating apps are so popular right now. I think this really is like this underserved market. You should give this a shot, and we did. And yeah, that was about a year and a half ago. We've been working on it since.
And you just launched it, right, a few weeks ago?
Yeah, so it went live about a month ago. We've gotten a good amount of downloads. We're being a little selective on who we're letting in, but we're getting good feedback. We're making improvements weekly. There's going to be a few different iterations. And yeah, I think within the next few months, we're going to have a really, really great product with enough people on it that you can find matches easily, and it can serve, the country well in terms of just different little pockets.
So what I found to be so interesting about the sort of background description that you just gave is that it sounds like the idea primarily came from those conservative women who you said that you were friends with. I just think that's so interesting because as 23-year-old young woman who just graduated from college, and I want to know if you may agree or disagree with this, I feel like the dating world right now is worse for women than it is for guys. And I think that has a lot to do with hookup culture, which I saw was just so prevalent in college. And I'm not fully against hookup culture, but I am against how widespread it's gotten, where it was just so crazy in college to see like people would hook up and then the next day the guy wouldn't text the girl, or sometimes the guy like wouldn't acknowledge the girl in the dining hall. And I think it comes from this idea, this modern day feminist idea that men and women are the same, that women want casual, meaningless sex as much as men do. And that's just, I don't think that's true. I think that women tend to prefer monogamy and relationships more than men do. So I think women are trying to convince themselves that they're into this hookup culture when a lot of us aren't. Anyway, that's an aside, but that's just to say, it really did interest me when you said that female part.
Yeah, and I think the left does that. They try to make everyone the same. Every group's the same. Men and women are the same. That's obviously not true. Obviously, masculine and feminine complement each other. Hookup culture obviously is really bad. Social media and other things have added to that. I think dating apps can be a way to date with a little more intention, especially something so specific when it's like conservatives. But yeah, I think when it comes to dating, especially for a young conservative girl, it's a total deal breaker. They will not be with someone that's not conservative. I think most conservative guys agree, but I think it's even more so with
That is so
girls.
true.
Yeah.
Yes, because as a conservative woman, it's not that I wouldn't date a liberal guy, but I kind of wouldn't date a liberal guy.
Yeah.
And a lot of my conservative female friends feel the same. So why do you think there's that difference? Why do you think men would kind of go either way as far as political beliefs, but women won't?
I'm not sure. I think with girls, they're looking for a little more security, something like they're probably looking for someone like their dad. They have something else in mind. I think young guys are being a little more wild, and even if they're conservative, they're probably open to dating any girl, even if she's a little more moderate, just because that's not front of mind where it would be for the girls.
Right.
Yeah, and I think as you get older, you want someone that sees the world the same way as you, and someone that you agree with on all of the major things, as opposed to if I were to date a liberal, not agree on any major thing, it'd be really hard to start a family or just do anything. So we're excited about what the app can do, and the overall culture probably needs some work too, but hopefully this is one small thing that can contribute to that.
So that's interesting that you agreed with my stipulation earlier that hookup culture is a problem, because sometimes I just think, oh, it's because I just graduated from college a few months ago and it's the college environment. So you're a few years out of college. Why do you say that it's a problem?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a problem for young people. I think as you get older, you need to kind of settle down. I think the biggest problem is that people aren't pairing up as easily because you have like a high status guy that has access to unlimited women pretty much. And so people aren't pairing up, and they're not pairing up as young as they used to. So then you're kind of living your two separate lives, and it gets a lot harder to combine those two things as you get older. So those things, it's not necessarily, I think everyone should have their fun in college. I did. But I think as you get older, it just gets harder.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. So I have to disclose to the listeners that I am on The Right Stuff. I think it is a great app. And one of the things that I thought was so funny when I was downloading it is the prompts that you have.
Yeah.
So, and I've never seen this on other apps before. I mean, I've only been on Hinge and Bumble, so it's not like I've been on a million apps. Mm-hmm. But you have to pick a song on The Right Stuff. And when it's also like a montage, right, of pictures.
Yeah, it's like a slideshow.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you have to pick a song that you feel like fits you. I thought that was really cool and very different.
It says a lot about you, your identity,
Yes.
or even just how you're feeling at that particular time. It's kind of fun.
I chose a Billy Joel song to start out because I love Billy Joel, and then I thought, this is so bad. I shouldn't do this. People are going to think I'm a 50-year-old.
Yeah, I chose a Justin Bieber song, so.
Yeah, I actually felt self-conscious because I was scrolling and everyone had like 2,000 songs, and I was like, okay, I need to change mine. So another prompt that is so funny on The Right Stuff is you ask people to put their favorite liberal lie. I think that's genius. So did you come up with that? What's the story behind
we
that?
wanted some generic prompts that are just icebreakers,
Right.
A shower thought I recently had, or what I order for the table, where people can be funny. But it's a conservative app. It's an app for conservatives. So we wanted to throw in some things that are like conservative, like funny openers, and like favorite liberal lie. Obviously, you can pick from a variety. Or like a random fact I love about America, just to kind of like make you feel like, oh, I am on something that's for conservatives, or your favorite conservative pundit, or even like the best Twitter account to follow. It's just, we just want to make it fun, and just, we think they're great like conversation starters.
It's true. It really is fun, and it's a great way to just start talking with someone because it's just a way to kind of break the ice initially. So how many people do you have on the app now? And I know that part of the app, at least in this beginning stage, is that you have to have an invitation to get on. Mm-hmm. So do you think that will continue, or do you think that you'll make it more open to the public?
No, I think it'll continue. I mean, what we want is just high quality, not necessarily a ton of people. Obviously, the more the better. So we've gotten 40,000 downloads, and we've let in about 5,000 people. Those people are free to invite people. So it's growing from there. It's just probably going to take a while. We might have to switch it up and just focus on one city at a time going into the new year. We kind of opened it up because we did some national media stuff, and it didn't really make sense to go on TV and talk to everyone and then just say, oh, but we're only in DC.
Right.
So we opened it up, but we're being selective on who gets in. Anyone that's in can invite someone. Anyone that finds it or downloads it can make a full profile, and we'll get you in as quickly as we can. We're reviewing those constantly, but it's just not the fastest way. So the best way to get on is to find somebody that has an invite, find somebody that's already in, get them to invite you. We open it up. Everybody has like 5 to 7 invites now, and the app is free to use, and then you just can pay for some upgrades if you need to.
I like that it's invitation only right now, because on Hinge, for instance, which is the other, I deleted Bumble. For some reason, I'm not crazy about Bumble, but I'm also on Hinge. And honestly, there's just such a volume of people. And sometimes the people don't look legit. Like sometimes it looks like a bot or something.
Yeah.
So I know that you're not trying to be exclusive with the app, but in a way, like, in order to have quality people and just to have like real life people on these apps, you do need a bit of a barrier. You need that invitation.
Yeah, we're trying to keep it super high quality. I think if anyone downloads it and plays around, they'll realize everyone's kind of in the same category as them, and hopefully they'll invite people like that are young conservatives looking to date, looking to go out. Nothing spammy, nobody trolling.
Right.
We do have to ban accounts sometimes that sneak in, but we do that pretty quickly, so you don't have anything to worry about. Yeah.
So have there been any matches that you know of?
There have been, yeah. We have people flying all over the country to meet each other.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's great, because it's only been up for a month.
Yeah. We have some success stories. Just the other day, one of the girls said she was deleting it because she met her boyfriend. So that's happening. Obviously, we want a lot more of that, and hopefully that message spreads. And I think it's a thing that can serve conservatives well, and even people that might not be as conservative as us, that kind of just want a more normal dating experience.
Right.
This is going to be a place for them eventually too.
So what's the ratio right now between girls and boys?
Yeah, we're getting as close to 50-50 as possible, but obviously dating apps always skew male.
They do? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh.
So some are like as high as 70-30. Ours is close to 50-50.
By the way, you can keep that ratio 70-30. It benefits me.
Yeah, that's true. As long as they're high quality. But
that's true.
Yeah, so it's just dating apps in general always skew towards men, but we're trying to do as best as we can to keep it close to a 50-50 ratio.
So I always wonder this with people who start apps. Can you see, like, for instance, my profile? Like, do you know how many matches I have? Like, because you're the founder, you run it. Can you go and, like, look and see the people I'm talking to, or I don't know if you're allowed to reveal that, but I'm very curious to know.
We don't look at your messages or something personal, but I can see everyone's profile, how many likes they've gotten, how many likes they've given, for sure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is a position of power.
Yeah, I guess. It's fun to review the profiles too, and you see people that are just finding their way to it, and sometimes they'll put it in there about, like, saw this on TikTok and here I am, or saw it on Tucker and here I am. So it's kind of fun to review the profiles and just try to get in as many of those people as we can.
That's how I originally saw you, by the way, was on your interview with Tucker, which I thought was great. Okay, so I want to ask you a little bit about your time in the Trump White House. So how long did you work there, and how did you get into it?
So I roughly worked there the first year and the last year of the administration. And I got into it because I started as a volunteer on the campaign in July of 2015. He announced in June of 2015, and I started as a volunteer in July of 2015. Sort of worked my way up. And
how did you do that? How did you go from a volunteer to being in the administration?
Yeah, I mean, it was such a small team that it was really easy to work your way up. When I got there was 4 interns, a campaign manager, and a campaign manager's assistant, and sort of just showed up every day. More things came along. I went to that first debate. When I was there helping the advance team, they were like, we need a scheduler, we need someone to book travel, we need this, we need that, can you do that? Took over that role, and then just morphed into traveling with the candidate full-time, which morphed into a role as his aide. And then when I came back to the administration the last year, I was serving as his aide, but he also had me run the personnel office, and we were building out sort of a team for the second term, looking at all the appointees. Obviously, the Trump administration had a lot of problems. Every administration does, but his probably even more so because of the hostility he faced from the establishment and just the normal DC crowd. So thinking about that and looking ahead, we were kind of planning for that second term. that unfortunately didn't come, but maybe it will come another time. Yeah, it was a great experience.
So what was one of the biggest things that you learned? I mean, I just can't imagine how many people you met, how many places you traveled to. I mean, you said you traveled with him during the campaign, so I bet you saw a lot of the country. What are some of your takeaways?
Yeah, so some of my takeaways would be during that first campaign, it was like a religious revival everywhere you went. People were so into it, and you could actually feel it was so powerful. That's why when people would ask me, do you think he has a chance? Or my family might question, is he actually going to win?
You knew. You
could
tell.
just feel something was happening. And we were going to 3, 4, 5 states every day on that plane. Just
oh my gosh.
dropping down all over the country.
Wow.
And to just see these people, and you could really tell like their hopes were all riding on this one man. And it was just really powerful to see, and it made me confident in like what we were doing. Then traveling at the White House, obviously it's just crazy experience. You're in Paris, you're in China, you're wherever, you're with the President of the United States.
So you traveled, for some reason I thought when you work at the White House, you just stay at the White House,
No,
but you traveled with the President.
So as his aide, yeah, I would travel with him, and you just get to see history right in front of your eyes. And it was really fun to see him work because he's just, such a unique person, but you can learn so much from watching him. Some of the biggest lessons I learned from him would be never back down, and to never
definitely does not do
to
that.
never lose your momentum. So that's something he would always say. It was really interesting. Whatever you're doing, just keep going. Just don't lose your momentum. Every little victory adds up, and you saw that throughout his career, whether it was television or real estate or politics. He's never losing his momentum, and that was just something cool to see.
So you kind of just alluded to it, but what is he like in person? Is that just the same person behind the scenes as it is on television?
Yes and no. Obviously, he's a larger-than-life figure, but he's really gracious. In a way, he's sort of humble and low maintenance when you're working for him personally. You'll see a lot of politicians that are kind of nasty to their staff. He's the opposite. And the lower on the totem pole you are, the better he is to you. So that's kind of unique. The people in high positions, he does hold very accountable, which is good, and he will dish it out to them and expect a lot of them. The people kind of lower that are just kind of doing their jobs, he treats amazing. And I think if you ask anybody that works at Trump Tower or that worked at the White House, from the gardener to the maid or whoever, they would say like, that's an incredible man.
No, I agree, and I have said for years that people's best qualities also lend to their worst qualities. Like, to your point, the best part about Trump is that he does not care at all, but that also leads to him saying all this crazy stuff. I wish he wouldn't, because he's just honestly giving people the rope to hang him. He's hanging himself, really, and it's sad to see because, again, I thought he was a really great president. So do people around him ever say to him, stop tweeting or stop saying this and that?
Do.
So what does he say to that? Does he just kind of laugh it off?
Sometimes he takes the advice, sometimes he doesn't. I think actually one of the misconceptions about him is that he's always surrounded by yes men. It's actually the opposite. He's surrounded by a lot of no people, and that actually hurt us a lot in the White House because he had a lot of great ideas, some that we got done, but some that people wouldn't do because they just thought it was too absurd, or we could never do that. We could never pull out of NATO or renegotiate with NAFTA or just
Right.
whatever it was. So there was a misconception that he was surrounded by yes men that let him do whatever he wants, when really I thought the opposite was true.
Did he take advice sometimes, or would he just kind of go with what he wanted to do?
Again, in my opinion, he took too much advice.
Really?
So, he loved to
that's
hear.
interesting.
He loved to hear everyone's opinions. He loved to get people debating right in front of him in the Oval Office. Sometimes it would get heated. Obviously, that's a good way to do things, to hear every argument out. But at the end of the day, we elected him, and I thought his ideas and his instincts were the best of anyone's. So I thought most of the time we should just go with that. And sometimes he got talked out of that because you have a room full of these experts who are telling
Right.
you your idea is crazy. It's not crazy. What you've been doing for 50 years is crazy. But that's kind of how he worked. He liked to hear everything, and it's a good way to go about it. But sometimes I wish he would have just gone with his gut.
You know, I think what you said earlier about what he's been through is a really important point, because look, obviously when you're a politician, you're going to get people saying unfair things about you or mistreating you, but really, I mean, the way that he's been treated is in a category of its own. And we just don't acknowledge the impact that that must have on him, because yes, he's incredibly tough, but he also is just a person. Mm-hmm. And I just think like, oh my gosh, I mean, all of this stuff that's coming out about the Steele dossier, that his opponent, Hillary Clinton, hired a law firm, which hired Fusion GPS, which hired the spy to make up all of this stuff about him. I can't imagine what that must feel like. Did he ever complain?
Yeah, he did, but...
Or did he ever get discouraged, I think it's a better question.
Early on in the administration, with particularly the Russia stuff, because it was such a hoax, and anyone that was with him on the campaign knows that it was literally just made up out of thin air. And to see them be able to launch these investigations...
Charles Dolan admitted it, one of the sources. He just said he made it up.
It was too much. So that particularly was just... It was crazy that they got away with that.
It is.
And yeah, it definitely wore on the whole team.
Yeah, I can imagine that wore very much on the whole team. So I was thinking about this a few minutes ago, and I want to ask it to you before we end. So you said that you traveled and you watched history being made. Tell me one or two things that you witnessed.
Yeah, so, I mean, going to China and seeing him sit down with, she was like really cool. And then also going to Paris and going to Bastille Day, seeing the parade, having them close down the Eiffel Tower. It was just really cool. Obviously, seeing all the deals get made and all the political stuff is cool, but the history of each place is just so unique, and you get kind of like the behind-the-scenes look at it.
Well, seeing the way that President Biden is handling China and seeing that he is, in fact, there's large evidence to suggest that he and his son are compromised by foreign governments, makes me really miss the strength that we projected under President Trump. So I can imagine that that was incredible to see. So everyone, you should download The Right Stuff, and John will let you in. You can just say that you listened to this timeless interview, and he'll expedite the process. Thank you so much for coming and doing this interview. Thanks so much for joining us today. And remember, each of our thoughts, choices, and actions shape who we are. So let's think clearly, choose wisely, and act with principle and determination. See you tomorrow.